Welcome back, my dear followers. This is a new episode of the history of the American Mafia, a podcast written by Fabio Fabiano and translated and read by me, Grace Carlisi. I do hope you enjoy this new episode. Cosa Nostra, the beginning. Although the early 1930s was a very difficult period for the US economy, with high unemployment rates and poverty, the newborn mafia families, however, didn't suffer economic problems. The following decade brought mafia organization a century-long period of prosperity. Joe Bonanno himself, in his autobiography, entitled Man of Honor, wrote just how the 30 years following the Castellamarese War represented a period of wealth for his mafia family, free from disputes both internal and external to the coterie led by himself. The beginning of this era can be identified with the meeting held in Chicago in 1931. There, Lucky Luciano and his closest collaborators' visionary project was fulfilled. Luciano was always willing to receive advice on management techniques from those with more experience. In fact, amongst his most trusted advisors was Joe Torrio. The organization he had set up managed to protect the bosses at the head of the families. The new bosses of families such as Bonanno, Lucchese, and Luciano acquired new skills following the experience of the management of alcohol smuggling, which had been one of the major consequences of the Prohibition Amendment. They transformed themselves into new managers, capable of organizing complex activities, constantly under pressure due to all the dangers that they could have encountered on the job. The new managers knew how to plan the distillation, the transport, and the sale of industrial quantities of spirits. They managed numerous people who worked for them and also organized armed gangs that took care of escorting convoys loaded with contraband alcohol. They had learned to launder the ill-gotten proceeds of money to avoid being targeted by financial investigations. They also learned how to bribe public officials, politicians, and policemen to avoid controls. After their first summit, all the leaders of the organized crime decided to meet in Chicago every 5 years in Congress, just like political parties do. In these symposiums, they discussed all the problems common to all the mafia families in order to organize and resolve them. The so-called commission would bring together all the boroughs and mafia families from all over the United States. It was decided not to use the term mafia to indicate the organization, but rather Cosa Nostra, while the expression outfit was used for the Chicago criminal organization. During one of these meetings, many bosses sensed the prohibition would soon be repealed. The easy money-making machine would soon be stopped. Social-economic conditions had changed. Due to prohibition, the US federal government lost about 14% of its revenues, which came from the taxation of alcohol. The office in charge of fighting alcohol producers and smugglers had spent millions of dollars in funds without being able to stem the phenomenon. Some economists suggested abolishing prohibition, as it would have revived the legal production industry of alcohol to expand the economy. There would be new investments and new jobs. So, in December 1933, the 18th Amendment was repealed, which sanctioned the end of the Prohibition era and the freedom to drink alcohol. Thanks to the money gained from alcohol smuggling, the criminal organizations were able to grow. They bribed officials and invested in other businesses. This new criminal structure allowed the most aggressive mafia families to survive the end of Prohibition. Those criminal organizations that had not been able to adapt from the changes were absorbed or destroyed, like many of those of Irish or Jewish origin. The mafia families engaged in various other criminal activities: bookies, loan sharking, prostitution, drug trafficking, robberies, truck hijackings, and lotteries. Shop and restaurant owners were constantly extorted, an activity that had already started by the members of the Black Hand, only that now the mafiosi presented themselves as insurers who would protect their clients against vandalism and fires in shops and restaurants. Obviously, those who refused to pay the so-called insurance or protection ended up having their places damaged or, worse, set on fire. The term racket was then used to define these new mafia adventures. The new figure of the post-prohibition gangster was that of an office-based manager who had now left the streets. He publicly showed himself in clubs and political meetings without fearing for his life. He mixed among the members of the upper classes by attending racetracks and golf courses. The capital accumulated during the years of Prohibition was invested in construction, waste trafficking, and trade unions. Initially, it was the Jewish gangs that infiltrated the unions. During the 1920s, in the clashes that arose between employers and employees, the gangsters played an important role by siding with one or the other and profiting from those they protected. By using this expedient, several criminal organizations have survived until today. For example, the Chicago Outfit, which was Al Capone's gang, is still active, while the division into 5 mafia families in New York conceived in 1931 by Salvatore Maranzano, survived almost to the present day.